Hi, welcome back to A Fine Time for Healing, a place where your physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being are all that matter. So put your feet up, relax, and enjoy today's show. Today, I have a special treat for you. Back with us today is Christiana Davidson, who is a psychotherapist, hypnotherapist. And the videos that we do together are always very popular. People really, really like this. So Christy and I are going to do this one today. And today we're going to be talking about why we grieve the loss of a relationship with a narcissist. Welcome, Christy. It's so good to have you back.
It's such a treat for me to be back, Randy. It's always I love doing these shows with you. We often have a bit of a comical moment at some point, um, but we always talk about really key aspects of being in this traumatic narcissistic relationship. And like you say, today now we're looking at when you've come out of it, what are you faced with then? Because that's not just the solution. I mean, it is part of the solution, but you're going to be faced with a lot
It's so
when you
true.
come
I mean,
out.
I think it's something that I get a lot of desperate emails and texts about, even when we're working on it, coach, client, people still really struggle with it. It hurts really bad. It's very painful. And sometimes it's so excruciating that it makes people do things that they know they shouldn't be doing. So why are we feeling the way that we are when we get out of these relationships?
Well, Randy, there's so many reasons why we have this. I mean, despite often the relationship ending where we were treated the worst we'd ever been treated by the narcissistic person, and in the moment, sort of making that decision, right, that's it, I'm never allowing myself to be in this situation again. We can find sort of a couple of weeks, not even that long sometimes down the line, that there's this sort of sudden like change in our thinking about them. We go from this kind of angry ending to a yearning, a yearning to be back in relationship with this person who, on the whole, treated us appallingly. Apart from a few moments, usually at the start more, and then intermittently over the duration, the most of the relationship was one where we were never sure of them, of their reciprocity towards us. We were always in a state of limbo, always in a state of stress, uh, always walking on eggshells. And yet there's a part of us that when we leave that yearns to have it back.
Yes.
You know,
And it frustrates people so much because what they're trying to process, they're using logic for. They're using their logical mind and they're going, well, I should be over this. There's no reason why I should still want this person. And when I think about this person, I loathe them. I
yeah.
don't want to subject myself to it. And yet I'm up at night and I'm ruminating and I want them. And it
Yeah.
makes people very, very frustrated, and it contributes to the pain because now they are sort of beating themselves up
Yeah.
for this thing.
Exactly. And so let's explore a little bit, maybe some of the reasons why there's this yearning to come back in, and some of them might be a bit uncomfortable actually. So apologies before I bring them up. But even this first one that I want to mention is that the thing about having a narcissist in your life, in whatever capacity, they tend to take over your life. So they tend to dominate. And you tend to then sort of focus your whole world around them. So we go from a situation where our whole world has a central base and a central focus, and suddenly that's gone, and we're left, sort of almost unsure of what do I do with my life, or what do I do with my with myself? How do I exist without this distraction that actually kept me from facing this about my life, that kept me from being alone with myself. And so for many of us, it can be a means of actually holding us back from stepping forward into becoming the version of ourselves that is narcissist free. And that version can sometimes be a scary one for people to imagine. What if I was confident? What if I was pursuing the career I want? What if I was stepping into assertiveness? What if I was a boundaried person? You know, what would that look like for me? And that can be scary, and we can sort of think, well, I don't know if I want to sit with this. It's more comfortable somehow just to be getting uh, breadcrumbs of love and distraction, as opposed to no love,
Mhm.
no breadcrumbs, and then
Yeah.
having to
You're right
to
on.
sit with
You're
myself.
right on. You're right on.
Okay.
You're absolutely right about that. And I don't think that's hard for people to understand,
Mm,
that
mm,
what's on the other side. Many people will vocalize that. Many people will say, I don't know what to do with myself without this. And
yeah.
I don't even know if it has to do with the amount of time that you've been in this relationship or not, but I think it has to do with your emotional investment and how deeply you were involved with this person. But I really like what you said. That makes a lot of sense, and it's actually something that I hadn't um, considered, and actually put into those words. So thank you. So that's one reason.
Yeah. And like you're saying there, Randy, it's why are we doing this? Because often for people, this sort of repetition compulsion, as they call it, the going back to the abusive person or persons. Why are we doing it? Because actually, it's not. It is the wrong thing, but it's also the right thing, because we're trying to process the first narcissist in our lives. And that's not always the case, but very, very often, I'm sure you find with your clients that this is something that they experienced very early on in their background. They came to learn that to be loved is to be used. And so now as an adult, it feels like you're letting go of love in your life, but you're not. You're letting go of abuse. Uh, and because people haven't really experienced the opposite, it can feel like I'm never going to have that love. That love addiction really is what it is, the trauma bond. And that can keep
So
people going
true.
back,
That is so true. I
hoping to heal.
I agree with you. It can feel like love if that's what you're
Yes,
programmed to accept.
it's true, Randy. It's almost like we've become addicted to having an abuser in our lives. It's like we want to be used. And I said I there, I think I'm repeating a bit of my own story, but it's like we do want to be used, strangely, because it makes us feel lovable.
Right. Exactly.
If they want us for some reason, even if it's for supply, uh, or if it's, for our looks or whatever it might be, at least that's somebody sees something in me that's of value. And for us to say no then to that, to being used, it leaves a major hole in the soul, or it makes us face that belief anymore.
This is so true. I know that a lot of people who are watching this and listening to this are completely relating to that. So that's a big piece of the puzzle. But there's other things going on, right?
Mm, absolutely. I mean, very briefly touched on it there, though. The trauma bond, the addiction. when you are in relationship with an abusive person, it does affect your serotonin levels. Like you're on alert, you're 1 minute you're up, next minute you're down, you get the highs, you get the lows. And that's what creates this sort of emotional dependence on the narcissist, is that we give over control of them to our feel-good hormones. And so, we come to rely on them for that hit to boost us up and to sort of feel good in our everyday. And then you take that away and there's no hit, there's no addiction, there's no no hit of addiction. So you go through that withdrawal period, and sometimes that can be so intense, especially if you've been in a relationship a long time with a narcissist, I think, because by then you have completely handed over your whole world to them, and you're faced with not much to come away with, apart from some material things, if you like.
Right. You're right. I mean, our brain chemicals get addicted to these people, and it feels like withdrawal from a drug, from an opiate. It is a withdrawal, and I think that most people don't understand how the narcissist does affect our brain chemistry, and how we do get used to these hits of dopamine and serotonin, and so and I think that the narcissist really understands this about us, and the love bombing stage is really to create that in the person, because once that's created, it's very difficult to walk away, even when you begin to see the red flags, right?
Exactly, because I find in my own story, but also with the work I've done with clients, that the love bombing for the person, the victim, as we call it, that it is a remedy for them to this terrible low self-esteem that they have. And suddenly someone comes along and is speaking to you as if you are the most desirable person on the planet, like you are sent from the heavens, and you have all these wonderful qualities. I mean, it literally lifts up this low self-esteem, and for the first time in your life you start to think, wow, maybe I can, maybe that is me, maybe I can be all of these things. And of course you can, but you don't need the narcissist to do that for you. However, it creates this intense need for the narcissist, because you want to feel like that for the rest of your life. And you get a glimpse in those early days of like, gosh, this is what life with this person is going to be like. It's going to be beyond my wildest imaginings. It's going to be bliss. So we get addicted to that feeling, that bliss feeling.
Why do we go from assigning blame to the abuser to assigning blame to ourselves? Because people will say, after a while, the rumination takes them to a place where they say, maybe it was me, when they know clearly it wasn't. But that's kind of where this thought process will take them. Why do we turn around and blame ourselves at some point?
I think in some ways it helps us sort of make sense of their rejection that we don't want to sit with. It kind of gives us a bit of control back, and as if to say, well, actually, if I did change, then we could have that blissful relationship that I wanted. So it's almost, in a way, I think that's almost opening the doors a little bit to the potential of a relationship with that person. If I had been different, then maybe it wouldn't have been so bad. So it's almost holding on to the fantasy. I think that fantasy seduction fake image that you were seduced by, thinking was really them. And it's not. It's a show, you know, the seductive show. And every narcissist is about seducing others. It's part of the process. You go through seduction, and you either allow yourself to be lured into that, and then kind of almost what can I say? You almost sort of say yes to the fantasy, and that you will continue to hold on to that fantasy out of love for the narcissist. But it's not them. You know, it is a fake act.
You're absolutely right. I also believe that, this goes in very much with what you're saying. I think that we need to create a narrative around this that makes sense to us. And what has happened doesn't make sense. There's no closure. So we're struggling to find something. And one of the things that people will say was, well, I wasn't perfect in this. And that's absolutely right. So what I say to people when they say that is, but yours was not a behavior, it was a reaction, which is very different. And so narcissists will do anything that they can to solicit a reaction. And even if you try to stay calm and you try to resist it, you're eventually going to blow. And
Yes.
This is what people remember. They think back to when they actually lost it, when they said things, when they called the narcissist names. And this is what they blame themselves for.
Yes. You know, when you are in relationship with them, their aim is to emotionally manipulate you, emotionally control you. That's the control part. The control is the inner control over you, over your how you see yourself, over your emotions. They can kind of jab at you and keep jabbing until you explode. You know, it's all like little toddlers, really. That's what they do, don't they? It's kind of push you to the limit because there's some sense of control in them. And the thing is, we can then think, oh, but hang on a second, I have similar traits to this. You know, I also do that sometimes. And you know, yes, we all have narcissistic tendencies. It's part of being human.
Right.
However, there's a healthy narcissism and there's an unhealthy, extremely unhealthy, toxic narcissism where it's gone to the extreme. Now, what happens in a narcissistic relationship is we can try to defend ourselves by becoming like the narcissist. You know, we can almost try to use what they're using against us to keep ourselves safe. But that's not who we are. That's us reacting out of defense, like what can I say? Survival, not it's not we're not trying to manipulate and control and garner supply and suck dry somebody else. No, this is sort of like
it's survival.
Means of just
Yeah, you're right.
Exactly.
You're
A trauma
right.
response.
You know, and we'll get into some other things, but just briefly, when you're grieving this kind of thing, this situation, when you're out of this and it's the worst pain you've ever felt. We are grieving a loss, aren't we?
We are. Yes, I think we do. I think we do fall in love. I do believe that, but we fall in love with with a fantasy person.
Right.
And I don't even know how to put that into words, really. I mean, falling in love with someone and then having that fall apart is one thing, but then realizing that you've fallen in love with somebody who doesn't exist. That's it. You know, it's unfathomable. How do you begin processing that? And I guess, you know, like you've said many times, Randy, and so wisely, that it's not something that we can cognitively really understand. And I guess sometimes what can help is just, seeing actually, okay, the reality of this, but then also seeing the other side, the narcissistic side, the narcissist side. Are they mourning? Are they mourning having been in love? Well, no. When we start to explore that side of things, then it brings it home even more. We become more and more sober, I guess, in inverted commas.
Yeah. This reminds me of, when I used to watch shows where they would have people who were catfished and fell in
Yes.
love with somebody sitting in a chat room who has worked them, taken their money, and professed love to them for years and years and years. And to realize that that never existed, but your love did, is you
Yes.
don't know what to do with that. So I think you made a
You
really
can't
good point.
comprehend.
We can't.
It's even when if you've been scammed, like I have, somebody ringing up and saying, "Oh, we need your bank details, we need this, we need the other," and you think, "Oh gosh, oh, thanks for your help on this," and really nice, nice manners and all the rest of it, and you start to put your trust in them that they're doing everything in your favor, and then something at some point just feels a bit off. But you might sort of deny it and then keep going, and then ultimately you realize they've just taken all of my money. And you can't comprehend how somebody could actually be so cold.
Right. Right.
So I'm feeling so, it just doesn't feel human somehow.
No. And so when you're dealing with a narcissist, and this is why I often say they're not physically, they're human. Physiologically, they're human, but their brain isn't functioning the way a human brain functions. But that in itself is very difficult, because you look at a person who is very skilled at playing the game, at being an actor, and to look back at all of that and think none of that was real is not something we can cognitively grasp.
Exactly. And you're right, Randy. It's like, it's we're given this facade, and we really do attach that facade to that person, to that physical being. That for us is who they are. But then what happens is we have to sort of almost detach that facade from the physical, and see it that that's not actually them, that actually they are an emptiness. There's nothing there for us to connect to, really. It doesn't matter how long you've been in relationship with them. If you look back, you'll think to yourself, gosh, there was no depth there. I mean, it might have been you kind of, opening up and sharing everything and, being vulnerable.
Right.
But if you really look back, were they really vulnerable with you? Were they really, was there really a true intimate relationship? And you'll realize there was nothing. The whole thing was this sort of superficial pretend,
Yep.
where you get sucked dry and there's nothing. That's all there is. It's parasitic.
It is parasitic, very much so. The phrase that I hear most often is, "I feel so stupid. Why did I stay in this? I saw it. Why did I stay in this?" And I will say to them, well, the thing is, when you are actively engaging with a narcissist, you're under a spell, you're conditioned, and you're not operating from your logical, the mind that you would have independent of that person. And every time you even begin to catch on, the narcissist can pick that right up, and then they use tactics to confuse you again, to knock you down.
Yes.
So it's important for people to understand that it's not about stupidity, because the brightest, most successful people get caught up in these things. So what are your thoughts on
It's
that?
like yeah, great point, Randy. I use hypnosis in the work that I do with clients, and when you're in relationship with a narcissist, it's like being, in some ways, under hypnosis, under a hypnotic mesmerization. They make you mesmerized by their false self, and they make you feel mesmerized by the sort of love bombing. You're almost mesmerized by this feeling of love, of being in love. And then what happens in hypnosis? You're highly suggestible. When you go
Mhm.
into hypnosis, you're open to taking on suggestions about yourself. And at first, those suggestions are going to be lovely ones and, oh, wonderful. And you're willing then to give your power over to them. And then it changes. There's a drop of negative. Oh, a hint of not being good enough, a hint of being a disappointment. And this is the sort of nature of that type of mesmerization, is that it's founded on the swing between being pleasing to the narcissist and then being displeasing to them. Um, and it swings between those two, and it's that keeps you always trying to be pleasing. If only I could maintain being pleasing, then this would work. But it's me that keeps ruining
Right.
it by being
Right.
displeasing.
I keep messing up. I keep messing up.
Yeah.
Why do we have this temptation? I think everybody does this at least once or twice, and maybe more than that, to check in and see what the narcissist is up to. Look at their social media, have people report in, so that we think that it's important that we keep up with the latest, when in fact it's the opposite, because what the narcissist is saying or doing in their behavior is it's not real, and it's the words and the actions are only part of the hunt, part of the predatory behavior. So, but we look at it and we go, oh, but he's flirting with this other woman, and he says he loves her. And why do we buy into that?
I think the thing is, it's understandable if you've been in love with someone. It can be so painful to see that they've, left the relationship with you and found somebody else that they're in love with. So that's a natural human response, I would suggest. However, when it's a narcissist, you want to know, are they happier without you? Has their life taken off without you? Um, and also, it's almost you're almost seeking to maintain the addiction. I think you're seeking just to get a little hit of something. Maybe if I see that they aren't so happy, oh, that actually gives me a bit of a sense of self-esteem boost.
Right.
But this is the funny thing with narcissists. Everything is manipulation. Everything. So whether you're seeing them, in a new relationship with somebody else, just remember that person that they're in the relationship is being manipulated and used to send a message to those, to yourself, to previous partners, it's all a big web of manipulating everybody. So the more that you can hold back from needing to check in and give your power away,
Mm-hmm.
and allow your energy to be flow in their direction. The more you give your energy to them, the more you're still going to be caught in the trauma bond. The more pain you're bringing to your own life, the more you're abandoning your own inner child. And really what needs to happen here is we need to say no thank you to being abused. and being used and being treated without respect. No more. No, I'm going to step in now and be the good parent to myself. I'm going to put my inner child as my priority, and I'm going to try to understand her trauma, because she or he is still traumatized. If I am finding myself wanting to go back to abuse, we've got to change this, and that's going to be my promise to myself. I'm not going to tell the inner child just to, that I'm going to abandon you as my parent did or whatever. I'm going to make a commitment here and a promise to that little me, that I will never allow that to happen again to them. And so I'm not going to be giving my energies to the one who abused me.
Right. You use the word abandonment, and I find that the people that have the hardest time recovering from these relationships are people who have had previous abandonment issues, often from childhood. And this is tapping into an old wound. So sometimes it's not, after a while, it's not even the narcissist that they're mourning. It's this abandonment feeling that has been all pervasive in their life. And as soon as it happens, it re-wounds them. How do you feel about that?
I agree with you, Randy. And this is going to sound a bit odd now, but that's why sometimes I think we actually do need to go back into these narcissistic relationships, because we need to be in touch with this abandonment pattern. We need to see clearly how we are trying to heal the abandonment wound in someone who's going to abandon us. That's the opportunity the narcissist gives us, is to step away from participating in that firmly, permanently, and to say, no, I'm not going to participate in feeding somebody who's going to abandon me. I'm not going to support that treatment of myself anymore. I'm not going to invest in it.
And absolutely right. Very, very good. I think it's also important that we switch our narrative from being a victim to being a victor. Claim our victory. Claim that we got out. Not everybody gets out of these relationships. Some people stay stuck in them for a lifetime. And as the victor, you have the opportunity to get it right next time. You have the opportunity to create the life that you truly want with a person who is on the same page as you. Yeah. So declaring that you won sometimes can be very powerful.
I think you're so right. And it's really the cure, I think, of this is okay, discovering your own self-esteem. It's low self-esteem that got you into this in the first place, really. And now discovering your own self-power, self-empowerment. I find for a lot of clients, not all, but many, that road is a scary one because they're used to being dependent. And part of the road to becoming empowered often is one where we have to face becoming independent. And we have to face all of these adult things, taking responsibility for finances, stepping towards doing the work you want to do, really taking charge of your life in every aspect is part of the creating a sense of self-esteem where the inner child feels safe with you as their parent. That's part of the work I would do with clients anyway, is working on that.
Yeah. People always say to me, but there's no closure. I want closure. I just want them to admit what they did. Just say it. Just tell me once. You know you did it. And people will say to me, without the closure, I can't move forward. And with narcissists, you will never get closure because they don't recognize that they have any part in your pain. Not only that, but they feel entitled to cause whatever they cause in you. So there's no way they're ever going to acknowledge what happened. How do we rectify that? How do we deal with that when closure is really important in so many aspects of our emotional health?
I think what it needs is a cold, hard truth slap. And I'm willing to sort of almost tentatively put a couple of things out there. You know, I mean, I think part of it is realizing that this is a tough one. That the reason the relationship ended was more than likely because actually the narcissist had had enough of you, that they were ready for you to move on, and they pushed you to the edge so that you would. So that can be part of the humbling truth of the situation, that actually they wanted this breakup. They wanted this to end. I'm not saying in every case, but that is quite often why the endings can be so abusive, that they're not getting you to leave, but they are. They're not saying, I want you to leave, but they are. But they're getting you to do it thinking that you're empowered, when actually, no, they've caused this. Another thing is, you know, thinking that the narcissist's feelings are also hurt, and that they're also yearning for you and pining for you, and that it's been hard, you know, that they're grieving. And yes, they will go through some grieving, but we have to be clear on what it is they're grieving. They are grieving more than likely the highs of the relationship with you. So they too like that hit of, you know, emotional prodding and being able to control you, and you know, that sort of thing. They miss the high of being the abuser. They also miss what you bring. So what you might have brought to them, maybe I don't know, you're very popular with people in the local community, or you're a politician, or you know, whatever it is that kind of they quite liked to have in their lives. It's like it's almost like you call a pizza delivery person and say, you know, yeah, I want this particular pizza, and the person makes the pizza, brings it, and gives it to them. They devour the pizza, but it's not the pizza man that they're bothered about. He can be discarded. It's just the thing that he brings. So that's what they're mourning. But to be honest, I would say that's almost about it. The rest of it, they don't want, they're not missing at all. In fact, they're pretty glad you're gone, because of your having seen beyond the false self. You're calling them out, your boundaries, your values, you know, your morals that make them uncomfortable, your personality that's, you know, independent of them, your connection to God. Ultimately, and that's my own personal view, that the depth of you is what they cannot sit with ultimately, because it's what they want and they can't get.
Exactly. And what we know about narcissists is that because their need for narcissistic supply is so all pervasive, it's a constant need that they must solicit constantly.
Yes.
And, and I liken this to somebody that has like a heroin addiction. They're not going to have one source of supply, because what happens when that runs out, or they don't have it to give? They must have
Yeah.
others. And so narcissists always have backups. They're always, if
Yes.
they don't have a full-fledged relationship going, they're wooing one. They're working on maybe more
Of
than
course.
one that they're going to full-fledged dive into when you're not available, because they can't live without it.
They can't. They have to connect out there. It's all external because there is no connection within. There's nothing. There's an emptiness. It's so desperately alone, and there's just a nothing. It's like an echo chamber. There's nothing there. There's not even an echo. It's just a chamber.
Nothing.
Uh, and so the supply and distraction has to be out there to this is who I am. I've got to maintain that yes, this is me. This is the image of me. That's who I am. That's who I am within. But it's not.
It's not.
And they know that.
Right.
Mm.
Are there any other things that we didn't touch upon that would create this terrible pain? And if not, I think then we can go into what to do about it.
I'm just looking through some of the things I wrote down here. I mean, only things like, there's a sense of sort of, there can be financial or a sense of safety somehow, in the relationship. Well, at least I could live in the house. At least I had this. That can almost make people go back and consider returning somehow. And especially also if there's children involved, I think that can be, the fantasy of the family that could have been. Yeah, I think that's about it, Randy.
Okay. And then there's this aspect of this, what's called future faking, where they present
perfect, yeah.
and they present a long-term goal, something an image that you believe you're going to have together. And you keep saying, but we were going to we were going to move to California. We were going to move to another country. We were going to live on the water. We were going to have all the things that we ever wanted, and we're going to be together and be happy. And then, to add insult to injury, if narcissists really want to hurt the previous person, they will say that they're doing those things with someone else. And that is devastating. The person will say, they were supposed to do that with me. But see, we can't pay attention to their words, because, as you say, Christy, they're always manipulating. Their words don't mean anything. It's always an agenda.
So whatever they're putting out there is for you, but it's also for others too. And whoever they're in relationship, it's not just about their relationship, it's about using that relationship to communicate to others and keep people under control. That's why, like you were saying, Randy, the less sort of checking upon them we do, the more empowered we become, and the more frustrated they might be. And then, the more likely a Hoover they might be as well, which is not always easy to deal with.
Right, exactly. So where do we begin? How do we stop the rumination, these thoughts that keep going round and round in our head? How do we interrupt this? What's the first step?
Sure. Well, it's not easy, because at the start it's going to be, you're coming out of an addiction, and a love addiction is pretty intense, because it really brings up all those attachment wounds. Right. So it's deep stuff, this. So first and foremost, I always go to the body, and I just say, look, yes, your brain's thinking about this person and doing that. Let's get you. Let's get you targeting your body, like getting yourself physically strong. Let's take charge of your diet. Let's take charge of that, because it's something that's very easy to put a plan in place to make your focus rather than them. And it's also empowering at the same time. And of course, you know, whatever we do with the body is the subconscious mind. So already we're starting here to empower you not only physically, but also in terms of your inner world as well, of taking charge of your life.
Okay.
So that would be my recommendation as one key aspect.
Right.
For sure.
You know, in many situations, we want to look for the best in people. And when something doesn't work out with a friendship or something like that, we always can say, well, you know, at least we had this or we had that. But we want to do the opposite with the narcissist. We don't want to look at the positive. We want to remind ourselves of all that has happened, because we tend to forget most of it. And we remember those times where we felt this high over this person. And so I always tell people to write down everything that's ever happened. And when you start that rumination, just pull it out and read it. Remind yourself, remind yourself, remind yourself, because it's mindfulness that's going to change your thought process.
Yes, because we kind of go back to like, oh, but there's tender moments, you know, and oh, you know, there's moments of affection. But I've started calling it, no, they're not moments of affection, they're moments of infection.
That's great.
That's when we were first infected. So it's kind of just bringing everything, even those tender moments. Yes, you were right to feel that. You know, it's not that you were wrong. It's not that you were stupid. You were seduced. And yes, you will have felt those feelings. That is okay. However, we need to keep it in the context of the reality here is that it was all a manipulation from start and into the future.
You're right.
And we have to, that's not going to change.
It's not going to change. And we have to remind ourselves of the reason that we're out of this thing. Whether we were discarded or whether we made the choice to up and leave, we have to remind ourselves of what that was all about. And you know, and like you said, we remember the highs, we remember the infection, the times of infections. I love it.
It's also, you know, I think, you know, so when we leave the relationship, you can often feel this like, wow, it's kind of like, oh, a relief that comes on you. But like I was saying, you know, we have to be aware that that lasts for a little bit, and then we're faced with the reality, okay, I've got to now become the center of my own life. And that's going to require now that I step out of my comfort zone, which has been with being with a narcissist, in the shadow of a narcissist. I got to come out now onto center stage, and I got to face all the fears that brings up for me. And that is the real healing. You know, that's where the real healing takes place, because often what happens is our lives begin to open up, and it's, for people, that can be really scary. You know, stepping into the person they want to be. And that's when you'll find there'll be a hoover and the person will go back, because it allows them not to keep moving forward into becoming fully alive, fully free. And that is really what's on offer here. You know, where there's the greatest abuse, there's the greatest healing and greatest abundance, I think, greatest justice on offer. So we've got to keep doing that out of respect for ourselves.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross came up with the stages of grieving, and I think that they truly apply to what we go through when and I think we do have to grieve the entirety, go from the process of denial to acceptance. But that can be paralyzing for many people. So what's the importance in your mind, in your opinion, of the grieving process?
Well, being the sort of psychodynamic, more of the psychodynamic type of therapist, whatever's happening in the present really is the past presenting itself. So, yes, we're mourning the loss of this narcissist, but actually it's a mirror into the wounds that we are really needing to heal, the mourning that we really need to allow out, and let happen. And yes, we do need to go through denial. We do need to go through all the stages in however they come to us. But it's not just about the narcissist here. It's actually it's almost mourning the loss of the person that I was, who I came to think was me. It's actually saying farewell, farewell. Thank you for trying to get my needs met, and thank you for trying to get me love, but I have to let that me go now,
Wow.
that the narcissist has so clearly shown to me. And that's the gift of the narcissist. They do show me how I've been showing up for myself
That
or
is
not.
so powerful, what you just said. I think that people that are watching this are probably, at that point, I almost burst into tears because that's a very powerful thought, that now I have to let go of who I thought I was becoming. And a lot of times, when we get into these relationships, it does take the focus off of our growth. We don't have to fix things because all of a sudden we're accepted for everything. And then that acceptance goes to control and power, and we don't have to even try because it's useless to try. So we're letting go of ourselves. Wow.
Yeah, we're letting go of the person that I was in those relationships.
Wow.
I
Wow.
have to grieve that, but, and become my true self, in some ways. And that's the part that we were afraid to be in childhood. We had to abandon in some, well, not abandon, we had to just keep under wraps,
Right.
by showing up in the way that we believed others wanted us to. And so now it's letting go of that and being
Right.
authentic.
And it hurts. To go through grieving is very, very painful. But I always tell
It
people
is.
healing doesn't come from skirting the pain. It comes from going straight through it.
Absolutely.
So you have to
And
feel
especially
that pain.
sadness. People
Mhm.
want to avoid that at all costs, I find. They're afraid of it because they're afraid it might overwhelm them. They don't know how to sit with it, as people say. I mean, personally, I when people say, "Oh, you just need to sit with your feelings," I'm like, well, what does that actually? How do you do that? I don't want to sit with them. I want to have some means of being able to process them, and that's where, working with someone like yourself or myself, you know, finding out how to process this without looking for an escape like a narcissist or whatever other addiction.
And I think that there's been so many points brought up um, in this hour that we're together, um, that when people think, well, I should be able to get over this. Why can't I do this? And how fast is this going to happen? But I think that after watching this, people are going to understand how many processes are at play here, and how much we have to undo and redo. And
Mm.
it's changing our mindset. This
Yes.
takes time and it takes focus. And
Mm.
really, the person who's hurt is the only one that can do it. Nobody can help
I
you do
agree. And it's so difficult because, well, I'm not going to say that for everyone, but it can be a difficult process because it's a psychological takeover. Your psyche has been taken over by a parasite. And we need to detox from it. And whenever you do a detox, even on the physical level, which I've been big into in my life, it can be so difficult to stay with it, because you just want relief from it. You want relief from the detox. But we've got to dig deep, we've got to dig our heels in, and we've got to go through it. And it does, you do move on. It passes, everything passes, this passes, and you will be at a stage where you can look back on it and be able to view it without the emotional attachment to it, even to the resentment and anger and all of that. So that will pass as well. You're able to look back and just say, I let I let this person go. I let them go with love to lead their life as a parasite, if that's what they wish. But I'm having no part.
Right, exactly. Wow, this has been such a powerful discussion. There's so many
It's been great.
people that I can think of right now that need to hear this, that I'm probably going to send this to, because it's a good reminder, and the fact that it's something we
Yeah.
can listen to over and over it would be really good. How do we contact you if we want to work with you? And you work virtually, right?
I do, Randy. So I have my main contact. Well, I can give my email address actually. So that's Christiana@delightinu.com. And generally, I work using a sort of a program that I put together, which is 11 weeks, but it's so, so powerful. Whether you've been in a narcissistic relationship or you want to work with your experiences growing up with a narcissistic parent, this is going to make you literally, you will know that you are moving on. Because we work on the subconscious as well, as you would know, Randy. So that's my main way of working with people, but I also do one-on-ones as well.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna say goodbye to our listeners. If you have enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber to the channel, mine or Christy's, please subscribe so that you'll get notification every time there's a new one that comes up. And we really appreciate all of you taking the time to listen. We hope it's been helpful. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really wonderful having you. I've enjoyed this discussion tremendously, and
Me too.
I always learn from you.
Likewise, Randy.
Yeah,
We're a
it's
mutual fan club.
So have a wonderful day, and we'll do
Thank
this
you.
again soon.
Look forward to it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.